In these several sessions, I want to look at several aspects of the working of the Hebrew text in Genesis chapter 22, which is an amazing construct of how the Hebrew language is used in the presentation of this most important material in the story of the near sacrifice of Isaac by his father Abraham, following God's instruction. The first part, the introduction, of course, in this kind of standard formula introduced by Vayehi, Achar Hadavarim Ha'ela, that it came about, Vayehi. So it then happened. After these things, and again, a non-disclosed time frame, except what we can derive from the narrative words itself, as to how long it's been since Isaac's birth back in chapter 21. But so after these times, sometime later, and again, where do we gather that? We learn, of course, that Isaac is a young man. He is called Hanar, a young man, which can be somebody as perhaps as young as 10 years of age. Could be as old as well into his teens. In other times, even the men who accompany Abraham on the journey up to Mount Moriah are also called young men, and so it can be a way of referring to servants who are of a younger age, perhaps even 20 years of age or more. We're not given that kind of specific, other than Isaac is not a child. He's strong enough to carry wood on his back, a measure of wood that would be needed to carry out a burnt offering. So he's no doubt probably a strapling teenager who is strong enough in this situation to carry out the requests of his father. But so the narrative then begins as the narrator, the storyteller, instructs us that after some period of time following the birth of Isaac, Elohim, the one true God, Nisa, tested Abraham. This term Nisa is used to describe various ways in which humans are tested, sometimes by other humans, sometimes by God. But the narrator wants you to know ahead of time that this is a test. Abraham himself doesn't know that God is, we sometimes use the word just, as if just testing is a limit on testing. But God is in this testing of Abraham. And then we get down to the actual divine-human interaction in part 2 of verse 1 with the two Vayomer introductions. First, he said, that is God, mentioned in the second clause, said to him, namely Abraham, Abraham. So God calls out to, I'm kind of surprised by that the writer doesn't use vayikra to call out kara. Abraham. It simply says, God says, Abraham, and he said, and we infer then Abraham's response, Hineni. And as we've seen previously in the Genesis patriarchal narrative, this word Hineni literally simply means behold I, but often has the concept of here I am, I'm ready to, here's my response to the divine call. Here I am ready to do, whatever God calls me to do. And so the introduction is first the setup for this divine test of Abraham, and then the initial call. Verse 2, second aspect of this introduction is the instruction, what Abraham is to do in response to God's call. Now, one of the things I've done there's a revision of the Hebrew text there, posted on Blackboard, is I've highlighted in blue with red lettering the use of the verb lakach, and most often it's either in the imperative, kach, and with the entreaty particle na, sometimes translated please, or it's in this case, a divine request, sometimes translated now, sometimes please, take now, follow my instruction. It's a simple cow imperative, masculine singular. And then comes the dynamic outflow of the text. As, again, we've talked about Hebrew repetition of, in this case, phraseology introduced by the repeated particle et, with an insertion of asher because it fits the content, asher, ahava, but in essence, a fourfold movement from this concept of sonship down to the naming of the particular son, Isaac. So, God's instruction, take your son. Now, of course, that could include potentially Ishmael at this point, and perhaps other concubine, because we're also told about Abraham's other concubines and sons that were born, and we're not told the exact time frame in which all of those were born. But take your son. Now we have this term Yechidaka, built off the word echad, meaning one. Yachad is a word meaning community or unity. But this is very much like what in the Septuagint and in the New Testament, the Greek word monogenes, spelled with one nu in the Greek, which means one of a kind, unique, your unique son, the one which asher ahavta you love, namely, more specifically, Isaac. So the drama of the instruction to take this unique son that you love, Isaac, and go for yourself to Eretz HaMoriah. So, one, instruction to take. Part two, go. Part three, now we're getting serious. Ha'alehu. Ifil form from Allah. Allah is to offer up a burnt offering in the Hifil, so it is to engage in the act of, the causative sense of offering up there, namely the land Moriah, that is just referred to as a burnt offering upon one of the mountains which God would show him, which I will show to you. So, take, go, and offer as a burnt offering. A dramatic threefold instruction in the imperative to carry out something that will put to the maximum stress the relationship between Abram and his son, Isaac, the one whom he loves, and go to this unique location, to this one mountain where I would show you and where you were to carry out this act. As we know, as the readers throughout Old Testament history also would know, that God was using this to test Abram's faith. So, the divine instruction outlined in a threefold fashion, multiple ways of highlighting the unique relationship between Abraham and his son Isaac, a special relationship. And so the willing to sacrifice that which was the unique, special son of promise. So again, all of this brings together the whole covenant developing promises of God in the life of Abraham. So quite the test to be willing to go beyond the instructions that God had given him in the various covenant relationship settings that we've seen through the previous chapters. God's covenant is put to the test in the call of Abraham to perform this most difficult task.